Labia Majora Piercings. Pros, cons, advantages, disadvantages. Gonna give you 5 of each coming up right now. For those who are new to the channel, my name is DaVo. I'm a professional body piercer and have been since 1994. I'm the owner and operator of the Axiom Body Piercing Studio located here in Des Moines, Iowa, inside Skin Kitchen Tattoo. So when I talk to you about these things, I'm talking to you at a level of expertise as somebody who has done this piercing numerous times and helped people through the healing process. Just a little bit of a disclaimer before we get into this too far. We are going to be, or I'm going to be, me, are going to be talking about a female genital piercing. If you are uncomfortable with that topic or it's something you plain don't want to know about, I would suggest picking one of our other videos. We have plenty on body piercing, tattooing, and body art in general. That might be a little bit more appropriate for you. If you are of an age where it may not be appropriate for you to learn these things, pick another video, please. If you feel like you're going to get some type of sexual gratification, or if that's what you're looking for, you're going to be disappointed. This video is solely for educational purposes for those that are considering getting this piercing, or their partners, or they're just curious. This is all educational. It's not going to get you excited in any way, shape, or form. Before we get into this, I should probably talk about anatomy and where this piercing is located at and jewelry, etc. Labia majoras are done on the outer labias, which are usually kind of thicker. They are done on the edge of the female genitalia. They kind of mark the border, so to speak, usually as high as possible to eliminate interaction with the jewelry when you're walking and interrupting normal sexual activities. Usually done with rings. Usually larger rings like 5/8, etc., and sporadically placed so that they don't bang together. With that out of the way, let's get into the pros and the cons of this particular piercing. That's why you're here, right? So we're going to get into the pros, the advantages. Number 1, increases sexual pleasure. This is a piercing like all genital piercings, or most genital piercings, that tends to increase or change your sexual experience. As I've said before, if you watched any of these other videos, piercings do not guarantee that you're going to have better experiences. It probably won't be worse than it was before. It may be better, but it's definitely going to be a little different. Many females have stated that pulling slightly or applying pressure to the piercings during foreplay and etc. is stimulating. Number 2. This piercing has a long history of healing without issue or problem. This is a piercing that's been around for an extremely long time. This is not new, experimental, or etc. It is something that you're probably not going to have issues with. Usually heals out in 6 to 8 weeks. Number 3 is an easy piercing to heal because there's a lot of blood traffic in that part of your anatomy. It is not prone to infection or other problems. Of course, precautions need to be taken, but you'll usually have a fairly easy heal with this particular piercing. Number 4, doesn't affect lifestyle. It's not going to affect movement, activities, etc. Maybe a little bit at first. It's not going to affect how you sleep. It's not going to affect how you eat. It's not really an intrusive piercing. In fact, it's a pretty common thing for people to say, yeah, I have them and I don't even notice them. Number 5, this is a piercing that you can have that no one other than yourself and those that you are intimate with, or those you tell or show, will ever know you have them. It's easy to cover under clothing. There's rare situations where maybe a locker room where somebody may notice it, but beyond that, unless you specifically want them to know you have the piercing, they are not going to know that you have it. If you work in a professional environment or live in a conservative part of the world, or have a situation with family where they would be a little bit less open-minded to you having piercings, this is a good choice. Now that we got the pros out of the way, let's move on to the cons, the disadvantages. Number 1, this is a fairly anatomy-specific piercing. It's a piercing that if the labias are not pronounced enough, it's going to be prone to migration. impossible rejection. Also, if the location is not high enough or there's not enough tissue there to do it high enough, it could cause or impair walking, be uncomfortable in walking, etc., and some sexual activities. One thing with this piercing that is kind of a disadvantage, and I'll just include it here because I already started talking about migration, is sometimes they can migrate or move a little bit after they heal. Also, I've had some clients that have complained about the tissue area thinning. Just like with a lobe, if you have heavy jewelry in it for a long period of time, like I do, it begins to stretch or lengthen the size of the lobe, and it can thin out that tissue. So that's something else you want to consider. Number 2, you are more acceptable to STDs even after this piercing is healed. You do want to practice safe sex whenever switching partners the way you're supposed to, boys and girls and ladies and gentlemen and everyone else, whatever way you define yourself. We're not really, with even a healed piercing, you have a hard piece of metal and soft tissue. And because sexual activity tends to be a little bit on the rough side, causing a tear in that increases the likelihood of you catching a virus from your partner. So, practice safe sex the way you're supposed to, which means you do latex barrier until you've both been tested, because we would like to keep you around and enjoy the rest of your life. Number 3, this piercing may lose its newness or excitement level over time. A lot of people will say, yeah, the piercing was exciting and it was sensitive and it was great and everything else right at the beginning. But over time, as that sensation becomes kind of commonplace and nothing really new, it just kind of turns into a decoration down there. This has a lot to do with your mental state than anything else, but you should be aware of that from the start. Number 4, you might find this piercing uncomfortable when wearing tight clothing or stiff clothing, walking, some type of activities that involve any direct contact with the piercing. You may find uncomfortable, especially at first, twisting and turning, etc. And it really depends from person to person, and it comes down to anatomy of where those can be placed, and it's something that you should discuss with your piercer at the time of marking before the piercing is done. Number 5, this piercing can bleed off and on for anywhere from 1 to 5 days, sometimes a little bit longer. It is a blood-rich area. It may take a little while for that wound to completely clot to the point where it doesn't bleed anymore. With that out of the way, let's move on to what I would give you as far as a consultation if you came into my studio and said, DaVo, I want to get labia majoras pierced. What I'm going to tell you is average healing time. They usually heal out in about 6 to 8 weeks. I do suggest treating it like a healing piercing for a minimum of 3 months, meaning doing hot soaks or using a sterile saline spray for roughly about 5 to 10 minutes twice daily and rinsing afterwards. Also, I would suggest using an antimicrobial or germicidal soap at least once a day just to be on the safe side. And then in the shower is best, and then urinating immediately afterwards. Cross-Contamination Prevention. All this is common sense stuff. Wash your hands before you handle it. Try to handle it by the ends whenever possible. The only time you need to have any contact with the piercing is when you're doing soaks or applying saline and cleaning it. Rest of the time, leave it alone. Also, keep everybody else's germy little fingers away from it. No oral contact or exchange of bodily fluids on, near, around the piercing for a minimum of 6 months. That doesn't mean you can't have sex for 6 months. That just means that you need to use some type of latex barrier. If you're using any type of lubricant or what have you, I do suggest sticking with water-based lubricants that are plain Jane. No heating elements, no flavors, none of that additive stuff. Also, make sure that if your partner's using a condom, that there is not spermicide on it. Gentle at first. Figure out what you can handle. If something's uncomfortable, either rest, take a few minutes, or try something else. Listen to your body. It'll usually steer you kind of along the right path. Keep your environment clean. Clothing, bedding, towels, anything that may come in contact with the piercing. Do not submerge the piercing in bodies of water you can't control the quality of, which is everything but your own clean bathtub. So that means no swimming until it's completely healed. Keep pets away from it. Don't let them sleep in the bed with you. They're just going to take whatever contaminants they've come in contact with and then put it on your clean linen. Lifestyle changes. With this piercing, I generally suggest wearing a pad for anywhere from pretty much the first week. Not only is it going to cut down the bleeding, it's also going to cut down on the amount of bacteria that's in the area because it cuts down the amount of moisture when it's most susceptible to infection. And it also kind of adds a little bit of extra cushioning while it's going through that tender phase. Things like sanitary napkins, panty liners, and pads is your best option. Avoid any activity that may put a lot of stress on the piercing. For example, if you do any outdoor activities that involve riding bikes, horseback riding, bronco busting, riding motorcycles or motocross, anything that's going to have contact with that area, I would kind of avoid for a little while until you get through that initial tender phase. Like with any genital piercing, I generally suggest that if you have the ability to take a few days off and just sit around the house and relax and wear maybe some comfy pants, that's your best option. Try to do it when you have a little bit of time to kind of recover. Clothing-wise, stick with clothes that are loose-fitting. Avoid anything that has a stiff seam, like, for example, jeans, anything that's really super tight-fitting. And listen to your body. If it hurts to wear something, you're going to have to kind of not wear it for a little while. Now let's get into the actual consultation and etc. When your piercer gets ready to do the piercing, usually they'll have you come back, go through the consultation, they'll take a look at the area, assess your anatomy, and then pick out jewelry. With this particular piercing, I usually go with a slightly larger diameter rings, usually about 5/8 of an inch to 3/4, depending how large the anatomy is. I have done them with curved barbells in the past. There was some issues, but it seemed to heal pretty well. The other thing you want to consider is when they get ready to market, your piercer should have you stand up and maybe lift one leg and then lift the other leg. What they're going to be looking for is to make sure they're high enough that it's not going to interrupt walking. Also, they should be kind of offset a little bit so that they don't interact with one another if you're getting a set or a grouping. We kind of offset it. It usually looks like they match, to be honest with you, but that's another thing you want to consider. And if you had the piercing, you're like, they don't match. That's why they don't match. And your piercer should probably inform you of this. That's about all I have to say on Labia Majoras today. If you have, if I brought up a question and you're like, hey, you didn't answer it, leave a comment. I usually answer comments if I have time. I'm pretty good about it, actually. If you've had the experience of getting this piercing and you'd like to share what your experience was like, please leave a comment. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. Let me know that you enjoyed it. If you would like to see more of these and more on tattooing and etc., I would suggest subscribing. Hit that notification bell so that you get notified every time we post something. Another final thing is check out our merch store. We got plenty of t-shirts, hats, mugs, coffee mugs, dog bandanas, a bunch of different stuff, not only to support the channel, but also to kind of show your pride in the fact that you love body art. Till next time, hope you have a good day. Hope all your piercings heal with ease and without a single issue. And if you're in the Des Moines, Iowa area, I hope to see you for your body piercing needs in the future. So long, everybody.